Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is our second event, which is a panel, and it's titled Career Indecision Panel because we have three really experienced speakers who will be sharing their experience throughout college and maybe just their career in general. So now we will go into introductions. So I can introduce myself right now. Hi, everyone. My name is Rodrigo. I am a sophomore and I am the Director of Operations at Dino Tech. And I will now pass it down to Lucy.
All right, thanks, Rodrigo. I'm Lucy. I'm a junior, and for Dino Tech, I'm one of the co-founders and co-executive directors. And I'll be presenting the last half of this career panel today. Also, shout out to Melody. She's also the co-founder and co-executive director, and she's also here today in this panel.
Yeah. So now I will be explaining a little bit more about Dino Tech and what are we, right? So if we go into next slide. So about Dynatech. So one of our main quotes is technology will make it inclusive. We're an all-inclusive student-led organization promoting educations for those interested in tech and in disciplinary studies. We provide workshops, panels, newsletters, and hackathons. So for 2021, we plan on organizing an online hackathon, mainly focusing on design. Keep your eyes peeled. We have so many exciting things coming this year, so we hope you guys can enjoy them and be part of this organization. And now I will pass it down to Lucy where, oh no, now we can introduce our speakers. So yeah, Dyllen, can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello everyone. My name is Dyllen 𝑀𝑬𝑪𝑯. I'm a student at Stanford University, but right now I am taking a gap year. So I am interested in art practice and symbolic systems, and symbolic systems at Stanford is basically like computer science mixed with psychology. So I'm also really interested not only in art and technology and combining those through the use of multimedia and human-computer interaction. I'm also really interested in the college application process. And so that's a lot of what I'm doing during my gap year is helping high school students get into college. And so I make a bunch of educational content on YouTube. I work with students. I help them craft the best application and essays as possible. And I came out with my own online comprehensive college essay course to teach you everything you need to know about how to write a college essay from brainstorm to final draft.
Yes, thank you, Dyllen. Now we will go on to Ferheen.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ferheen. I am an almost med student. So I recently got accepted into medical school and I'll be heading off in a few months. Don't know where yet because I have a few choices, but hopefully, going to stay here in California. And so I did a double major in molecular and cell biology and Japanese back when I was at UC Berkeley for undergrad. And then I got to, combine the two of those to do my master's in medical science at Osaka University in Japan, where I was doing research specifically about reproductive biology. And so as a scientist, I was making a lot of genetically modified mice, and it was exciting and fun, but at that time I'd realized that I really liked humans more. And so I finished my master's, came back to the US, and was pursuing medical school for the past few years, and then got in. So I'm currently working for an organization called Global Offsite Care, which is a nonprofit that brings telemedicine to underserved areas of the world. And then I am also working on a passion project called 𝑀𝑬𝑪𝑯. It is a reproductive health website, as I want to hopefully be a gynecologist in the future. So it, aligns well with my passion. So thanks so much.
Yes, thank you, Ferheen. And lastly, we have Praj.
Hi guys, my name is Praj Iyer. I'm a senior at UC San Diego studying structural engineering with a focus in aerospace design. A lot of my interests are in mechanical and structural design, and I want to work in support of the upcoming Artemis missions for NASA. That's one of my biggest goals right now in the short term. So I'm doing everything I can to try and get there. Currently working at Megit as an engineering intern. although that just ended a couple days ago, actually. So right now I'm actually doing my senior design before I graduate. A lot of my interests in terms of like interning and like the research I've done have been at the crossroads of engineering and biotech in the past, because I used to be a bioengineering major at my old university, but I kind of pivoted to structural and mechanical design once I kind of formulated what I actually wanted to do in the long term. I've worked for several engineering labs in fundamental biology as well as engineering. I've also worked in industry and a lot of different biotech companies, but also at an engineering company. And I've been a part of a few engineering project teams. The most recent one was trying to build a liquid propelled rocket. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Praj and Dyllen and Ferheen. Now I would like to pass it down to Lucy, where she can introduce the panel.
Yeah, thank you, Rodrigo. And thank you to our speakers for introducing themselves beautifully. Now we're going to delve into the actual panel. And our team, we thought of like 4 really broad questions that we're going to ask the panelists. And then from there, at the end, we can ask them individual questions with the Q&A. So first question, how did you guys decide on your major or career? And is it related to your passion? We also have a really quick guiding question. Did you go into college already knowing what you were going to pursue? So any of you guys can start off, or I can call on someone if you guys have a preference.
Okay, I'll jump in. So I guess I'll start with the guiding question, actually. So I kind of already knew that I was going to go into something related to art and technology combined. So first of all, this field is like very, like no one really thinks about art and tech being like a field, but it is now. It's becoming one because it's, you know, it's an ever-changing environment we're living in the digital world. So I've always loved art. I went to an arts high school in downtown Los Angeles. And so I was really interested in like drawing, painting, photography, that kind of thing. But towards the end of high school, I was like, well, I kind of want to branch out because I don't want to just be an artist who just like, you know, makes drawings and like sells them. Like, that's not what I wanted to do. But I also became really interested in tech in high school through Girls Who Code, which is an amazing summer program. It was like 7 weeks long, learning coding for the first time, and I loved it. And so I was like, how can I combine both of my interests? And so I actually really wanted to go to USC before I actually ended up going to Stanford, because USC had this awesome program that combined art, technology, and business called the 𝑫𝑰𝑵𝑗𝑚𝑨𝑚 Academy. And it's all about like innovation. And I think that's super cool because I want to be like an entrepreneur or innovator of some kind, combining all of my interests in one. I think that's ideal for me. So then I ended up going to Stanford, and I was a little unsure because I didn't know what exactly I was going to study there because they didn't have a major like USC did. But then I later came to realize that, oh, art practice, I can major in, but take the classes that relate more towards tech, and then minor in symbolic systems to get the very heavy like CS background and other psychological concepts that tie into everything. So I think, yeah, it's a very interesting field. Oh, also, I feel like people don't really understand what is art and tech combined? And sort of, I don't either. But from what I know now, there are things like VR, virtual reality, or different types of design, or building immersive experiences, or different or creative ways of representing ideas. So there's just a lot of possibilities out there for what it can be. And I'm honestly still exploring it myself.
I'll go next. So for me, just to let you all know, I graduated high school back in 2010. So it was quite a long time ago. And so when I started, I did not want to be a doctor, actually. That was one thing. Even though I was going into the bio major, I wanted to do physiology because when I was in when I was in high school, I really loved my physiology course. I just really fell in love with this human body systems, but I had no idea what I was going to do with that. And then I also took Japanese in high school, and I loved that a lot. And so I was, I kind of had this idea that I wanted to definitely continue with Japanese, but then I did this, molecular and cell biology major just because I liked physiology, but I had no idea what I was going to do with that. To be honest, I thought that I was going to go to Japan and teach English after I graduated from college, but that didn't work out. I unfortunately did not get accepted into that program. So I kind of said, what do I do next? And so, so first off, so Berkeley is a really difficult school. It's very, the undergraduate class or the prerequisite classes like chemistry and organic chemistry are incredibly difficult. You're competing against, 500, 600 other students. And many people, switched majors, but I was just very stubborn, and I and I just kept going, even though I wasn't doing very well, which was unfortunate because in high school I was a really good student, and then suddenly in college I was a C student, and I was very frustrated with myself. But but I still really liked biology, and I did well in my upper division courses, right, where I got to learn more about just pure bio. But all of those lower division ones, nope, I got a lot of C's. And so it wasn't, so then when I went to Japan, I ended up going to Japan for my master's. I got a scholarship. It's the Japanese government paid for all of my education and, my living. And it was kind of there where I, was doing this research. I was enjoying it, but I just really felt like there was something missing. And that piece that was missing really was that human connection. And that's kind of when I pivoted and decided, yeah, I wanted to, try to go to med school. So, the question of how did you decide on your, major/career? For my major, it was purely random in that sense, because it was I just like biology and I really like Japanese. And then in terms of my career of wanting to, become a doctor, and specifically a reproductive specialist, right? For a gynecologist, that is all because of my experiences. And so something that I kind of want to leave you all with, I know we're just starting the panel, but don't be afraid to explore, because I know many of you are in high school and you're like, I don't know what I'm doing for the rest of your life, my life. And that's okay. You don't have to know, you don't have to know that you, again, want to be a doctor, an engineer, or an artist. You don't have to know. A part of kind of doing that journey is the most fun part. And so again, just letting you know, I'm 28, right? So it took me a while to figure out that I wanted to go to med school, but now I'm going to go to med school. So it's not too late to kind of figure out what you are passionate about. So, yeah.
Yeah, going off of that, I really agree with a lot of what Ferheen said, because it definitely applies to me. I think the next question, I can touch more on that. So let me just start with the guiding question. I did know what I wanted to do in terms of my career, because I grew up, my mom's a PhD in biophysics, so really, really loved bio. My grandpa taught me math from a really young age, really loved math. So I guess it's just because of my family that I kind of knew that I wanted to do something technical, but I didn't know what I wanted to apply it to. But then I used to go to India a lot as a kid, and growing up here, I grew up in a relatively affluent area, but then every time I'd go over to India during the summer, I'd just be surrounded by poverty. It was just a real reality shock, especially when I got old enough to understand what the heck was going on around me. So I knew I wanted to try and do something to help people. And I looked into bioengineering starting my junior year to see what I could do to help amputees, because I knew a family member that was an amputee and struggled a lot, and how there's a huge cost ceiling to getting proper treatment in the US. So instead of trying to fund things indirectly, my passion started to become can I make tangible things at a cheaper cost that can directly help people, so that I can circumvent funding issues totally. And in order to do those things, you need to be really good at designing things from the ground up. And you have to have a really strong technical knowledge to do those things. So definitely wanted to do something like that. And so that's why I chose bioengineering going out of high school, because it kind of checked all the boxes. But I switched majors, as you can probably tell from my introduction. So I'll get more into that later, but I had a strong goal. And I think that going into college, that I thought my major would help me pick that. But as I got into college, I started learning more about rocketry and the upcoming space efforts, like SpaceX in the early 2010s was really like starting to ramp up, doing some really innovative stuff. And I really wanted to be a part of that. And I talked to a lot of people at NASA, and there's this thing called spin-off at NASA, which is basically a lot of technologies that people make for space just end up being used in other industries. And something that I've learned is that a lot of knowledge that is generated in the modern age is at the intersection of a lot of different like disciplines and fields. So my goal has become to learn engineering and technical skills in aerospace so that I can apply those things in the long term. And that's why I switched my major. And that's how it's related to my passion. Is this, I need to build as strong a technical background as I can in order to do the things that I want to do in the long term.
Yeah, thank you so much for all three of you. I really like how you guys have different pathways, but at the end, it still revolved around this question. And fun fact, this question was asked in our interest survey like the most, probably around 7 to 8 times, I believe. So all of your insights are extremely important. Thank you. Moving on to the second question. I'm pretty sure you guys have already touched on this a little bit with the first question, but what have been some unconventional turns in your majors or careers? And we have another guiding question. Have you ever switched majors in college or university, and what was the process like?
So I did not switch majors, also because I haven't even declared yet. I'm pretty early in the process. Like I finished my freshman year of college and then I took a gap year. So haven't had too much college experience yet, but my freshman year, I was definitely confused or feeling lost in what I wanted to study, because a lot of people do that come to Stanford. So this is another thing, like you definitely do not need to know what you want to do with your whole life by the time you apply to college. I think it's good to have things that you're passionate about though. So when I was in my freshman year, I was like, oh my God, like, I don't know if I'm preparing myself enough for what I'm going to do in the future. Like I need to know, because I'm a very organized person. I need to know like what classes am I going to take? What am I going to do? How am I going to get from point A to point B? And I did a lot of research into the classes, and just like, spending a whole Friday night for like many, many hours instead of going out to party, I looked at every single class like offered at the school or like in the programs and disciplines that I was interested in, and realized that I could get what I wanted out of an art practice major and a symbolic systems minor. And because within the art practice major, there was a lot of classes that related to my interests that were really interesting, like data as material. I took that class, or there's some digital art stuff. There's some like performing with digital media. I took that class. So these are classes that combine art and technology at the same time. And it isn't what you typically think, like, oh, painting one, like it's not that, but they offer that as well. So those have been really interesting. And I think taking that like performing with digital media class is just a cool example of something where I tried out a field I didn't really know existed. Like, what is performance art, right? But I created this whole performance where I was able to combine a lot of my interests. I'm also a performer. Like, I like to dance, act, and sing. So I made this thing where I created this animation in After Effects that was like changing colors and stuff, and projected it onto me live doing a dance performance in front of it. And it was like my silhouette. And then I filmed that, put it back into After Effects, flipped the video. I know you don't know what I'm talking about because you can't see it, but And then I recorded myself again with that other projection. So then I had like double of myself, and it was like a power play almost between myself and my other self. And so there is a whole concept around that, I promise. But it was really cool. And just the art classes at Stanford made me think a lot about the concept, because high school was more about skill set and making things that you want to make, making things that look pretty, but there's so much more to that in terms of like conceptually, what can you create that actually conveys a message or means something, and how does every material that you put into it help facilitate that message. So okay, that went a turn from the question, but yeah, that's basically it. And that's how I figured out, like, okay, there are classes that I want to take and I can get the kind of education that I want here. Okay, my last point that I wrote down, because this is really important, is that I feel like in college, you craft what you want. You craft the education you want to get out of it. It's not, you don't need to heavily rely on the major or the program, which I thought I had to with that other like USC thing that I didn't end up going to. So I realized that the major and minor that I'm doing, like, that doesn't really matter. What matters is the classes that I'm taking and what I'm getting out of it. So I'm making sure that I'm taking everything that I'm truly interested in. And there's so many classes that I have planned to take that I don't even need for a requirement, but I just want to, because I want to pick up those skill sets. So yeah, less about the major, more about classes you take and what you want to craft out of your college experience.
Yeah, I feel like we're doing this really great like Dyllen, Ferheen, Praj thing, so let's just keep that going. So yeah, so I think for me, unconventional turns, well, I mean, first off, again, I really had no idea what I was going to do with my future. I had a lot of interests, but no real plan or pathway. And so again, as I mentioned, right, was really, when I was in high school, my Japanese teacher did this, teach English in Japan program, and I was set on that. But again, as I mentioned, I didn't get into it. So, and even though I really thought I would, come on, I was already a Japanese major. I was, like doing a lot of work in the Japanese American kind of space, but I didn't get in. And so I feel like that was kind of more unconventional. And then also, right, when I was in college, I didn't do any kind of science research, right? So even though I was a bio major, I didn't do any research, and I was actually way more interested in social justice. There was this one time, I think it was a junior year of college, where I thought maybe I'll switch into law, and kind of do, women's rights law, right? And kind of go down that path, because I knew I was really passionate about wanting to help women, and kind of getting that social justice, piece, like that was my passion. And then yeah, so then when I had that opportunity to go get my master's in Japan, I will say that at first I really didn't want to, because I was really tired of going to school. I had not planned to do any sort of higher education in that sense, right? Like going to graduate school. And to be honest, I didn't even think my GPA was strong enough, right? I went from a 4 point whatever, student in high school to like a 3.4, I think I graduated with, right? So it was fairly low compared to what other people in, my friends or other folks have received, for their GPAs. So I really didn't think that I was going to go to grad school, but that program that I applied to get my master's in Japan, they liked my story, and so I ended up there, and I was again doing this research, and I thought, oh, maybe I'll do a PhD, but then again, like I had the opportunity to shadow an OBGYN in Japan, and he allowed me to scrub into surgeries, like 2 surgeries, and it like blew my mind, right? And I got to just watch him operate, like there, like a person is in front of me, right? And so and then we also got to, like, I got to see like clinic patients, and like the OBGYN like talk to these pregnant moms, right? And like help them through whatever they're dealing with. So it was like that moment really that solidified, I think I want to go to med school. But again, it took me a long time to come to that decision. I think I was 26 when I had really decided that I want to go to med school. So You know, so again, like I think that my pathway has been, so even though I was a bio major in college, I didn't decide to go into medicine until later. And again, I'm just gonna reiterate one more time, you don't have to know what you want to do. And honestly, I think that people who, like, for example, right, like right now there are a lot of people, maybe some of you who are like, Ferheen, I want to go to med school right now, like I I know I'm only in high school, but I want to go right now, right? And so you'll go to college, you'll do everything med school related, like I'm gonna do a bio major, and I'm gonna volunteer at a hospital, I'm gonna do every single thing bio related. And then you go to med school and you realize that you hate it, right? And then you become a doctor, but you're actually really, really unhappy. And so I'm really proud of myself, and I'm happy that I got all of these different kinds of experiences before I ended up choosing what I'm choosing, because I know that I am, yes, I'm going to be much older than a lot of my classmates, right? But I know that this is the path for me. So I'm really excited for your journeys, and for you to figure out what is your pathway. But don't be afraid to take time. That's kind of the other thing I want to leave you all with. Like, don't be afraid. It's okay if you don't know what you want to do. So yeah.
Ferheen saying a 3.4 is low, making me feel bad, man. Ouch. I'm just kidding.
But hold on, I wasn't an engineer, so it's different, right? Like my C's are from like chemistry, but yours are from, I don't even know. Like
no, I'm just messing. Yeah. So I did switch majors in college. Going into college, I was a bioengineering major at UC Santa Cruz. And I think like Ferheen really hammered the point home, is that you can't predict life and people change. There's literally no point in being an absolutist about anything. Like, you have to accept that you're going to change as a person as you grow up, especially in these years, because you're a sponge being molded by information and experiences that you have until you're like 50, and even past then. People change until their deathbed. So my biggest point is probably don't be an absolutist about anything, but have like a goal in mind. But you have to acknowledge that that goal can change, and you'll be happier that you let yourself acknowledge that. But that being said, I guess getting into the specifics of why I changed my major. So my old university, UC Santa Cruz, there's this thing in engineering called ABET accreditation. And it's a really important thing to have for your major. So if your university doesn't have an ABET accredited engineering degree, it's not really as technical as industry wants it to be. And so you're going to have a harder time competing for jobs. And I also got a lot of advice from my bioengineering professors and people that people who labs I had worked in that were bioengineering majors at a PhD level, that I shouldn't do my undergrad in that, because a lot of what I wanted to do was not protein engineering and stuff that a bioengineer is specifically built for. What I wanted to do was biomechanics. And a lot of those jobs compete with other engineering majors like electrical engineering majors or mechanical engineering majors. So I got a lot of advice to just switch my major, and then I would have a better shot at the types of jobs that I was pursuing at the time. But my old university didn't have those majors. So it was on me for not doing enough research into the field before I chose it. So I dropped out of UC Santa Cruz and I went to a community college for a year, and then I transferred to UC San Diego. So that really deviates from like the 4-year plan that everyone kind of espouses, and my parents were very concerned. My friends were very concerned, because like I'm a person that is known to have like a plan in mind, and like I have certain timelines that I want to follow. I guess that's just the mindset that engineering cultivates, is that it's a very rationalist and like evidence information based way of approaching life. So like Dyllen said, like you really plan out your things, and like I'm very much like that. Like I need to know where I'm going, and I need to have a concrete plan of where I want to be and exactly how to get there. So I guess like information is like your best friend. Talk to everyone you can about your goals, get their opinions, and then do the research yourself and then confirm with evidence your plan of getting from point A to point B. And that's kind of how I justified it to myself, was that I have a goal in mind and I have a plan of how to get there. I don't care what anyone else says or like what the perception of me is. Like as long as I know that I want to get there and that's my passion, then it's okay with me. And that's all that matters at the end of the day. And if you're kind of like, I don't know what I want to do, there's still, for some reason, this huge stigma of going to community college instead of like going to a four-year university. Like coming from an Asian household, I know that there's a lot of stigma, like not going to like a four-year college out of high school. People are going to talk about you all they want, but like what I've seen is that my generation and like your generation and like even the generation before us, like we're also like supporting of each other, that people really care a lot less than you think. It's kind of just what you've been told growing up is why you have that image in your head. So if you don't get into where you want to go, or like you have kind of like no idea what you want to do, the way I justified it is that I'm saving money by going to community college. They're like a lot cheaper than a four-year university, and you can take a lot of exploratory courses over there. Just chill at a community college for 2 years. You're really not missing out on much freshman and sophomore year, honestly, just taking all your GEs and like your lower div classes. You'll see people from high school there. Like you still have people to talk to, people to hang out with, and people always come home for summer and break. So it's really not that bad going to community college, and you're saving a lot of money. And you can take those exploratory courses if you have no idea what you want to do at a community college. That's literally what they're there for. They're transitionary programs for people that want to get to a point B but need a stepping stone. So they're just break the stigma of community college if you don't really have a clue of like what your passions are. So I think that's the most unconventional turn that my, I guess, career has taken thus far, is dropping out of 4-year, going to community college, and then switching my major at a different university. So yeah, I hope that answers that question.
Yeah, I'm so glad we included this question in the panel. Like, this is so insightful. You guys are literally answering my questions. And it's really reassuring to know that we don't have to have a solid plan after high school. I was actually just worrying about that just before the panel. So thank you guys so much for your insights.
I think many of us, or like I know many high school students that worry so much, and they say like, I don't know what I'm going to do. Am I doing the right thing? And I think you guys, are proof like that you do not have to know exactly what you want to do in college, but you'll figure it out there based on your passions or choices that you made based on like your classes or whatever your interests are. So I'm really glad you guys answered this question.
Beautifully said, Rodrigo. And moving on to question 3, what advice would you give high school students interested in your field? And this is a really broad question, so we broke it up into different examples, whether that's extracurriculars, the courses you take, standardized testing, and college applications.
Okay, so I'm not going to touch on all of those points, but I think I'll touch on like college applications in general, since that is my specialty and college essays are my specialty. So I work in literally this field. That's what I've been doing my entire gap year. So one thing that I think is super, super duper important when approaching college essays specifically is having a structure. So approaching it, knowing what's the theme that you're going to write about, and crafting a story that is cohesive. So like it wraps around in the end, it feels like a nice bundle rather than here is my life story. I'm just going to spill out everything that's ever happened to me and all my challenges and all my thoughts. Like the college admissions officer wants to get a clear picture of who you are through these nicely crafted stories. And it's all about your values and your skills, not skills. Well, and not like technical skills per se. Yes, in some cases, but a lot about your values and your personal qualities, because And a lot of times students get caught up in the test scores and the extracurriculars and am I doing enough? Am I studying enough? Am I doing this and that? Like, yes, but they want to know who you are deep down, like your values, like I've been saying. And that is so important. And that's what you really, really, really need to get across in your essays. And like I started with, create a structure for them, because a lot of times students start writing about one thing and then it like trails off into something else and then it has a different ending theme or story. Or it just doesn't sound cohesive, or you talk about the problem or the challenge for way longer than you need to, and you don't focus enough on the reflection part of it, where you talk about what you learned from this experience, what you got from it, the skills you gained, how you applied it to other areas of your life, and how you intend to use that in the future. Like, there's a bunch of different strategies to write the college essay, which is so, so, so important. And a lot of people overlook, especially if you don't come from a background where you have ample resources to help you with that. Like, I went to high school, a public high school in downtown, and we didn't have that kind of help. I couldn't afford a college counselor. The college counselor that we had in our high school, there was only one for like 400 students. And even she didn't have all the best advice when it came to writing essays. I mean, she had guidance on like, oh, fill out this form, like here's the application website, like logistical stuff like that. But when it came down to strategy, that was something that was super, super important. And I did a lot of research on. Another thing that's really important is making your college applications cohesive. So a lot of times you might be, if you're doing research about like college applications, you might hear some stuff about like, oh, it's better to be a pointy student than a well-rounded student, meaning pointy as in like all your extracurriculars and everything centers around one field that you know you're going to go into, versus well-rounded where you kind of like dabble in a bunch of different things. But I don't agree with that. I don't think it's like, oh, they're going to love you if you take a ton of CS courses, you only do CS extracurriculars, you want to major in CS. Like, sure, great, you have a passion, but how does that shape you as a person? You know, people need knowledge in a lot of different fields to contribute to their one field. I think even Praj was talking about that a little bit, like having that understanding of different things to then use it in the one field you're going towards. So by cohesive in the application, I don't mean only one thing. You can have multiple things that you love to do. Like, I loved computer science, I loved art, I loved theater. I performed in musical theater a lot. I loved education and psychology. Like, there was so many things I was interested in, but it's the way that you kind of wrap a bow around the whole thing throughout your college applications by creating connections between values. Like, you used values that you learned from this activity and used it towards this, or the way that you combine the fields in different activities or in your essays, however you want to do it, or the way that your mind works and that your brain thinks. If there's an analytical way that you think because you're super interested in math or computer science, and then you applied that to the ways that you executed an art project, like, those things are really interesting, and it's nice to create those ties. And I know this might seem like overwhelming right now for me to be just spitting all this information at you. So I'm actually going to paste my link in the chat, because I have so many resources. It's insane, on the college application process and everything. Like, I have a free Google Drive folder with tons of stuff that I found on the internet and created myself. I make videos on all of this stuff. And like I mentioned in the beginning, I have a whole college essay course that walks you through how to write a successful college essay that I highly recommend you guys checking out. So that's for me, and I'll paste that in there.
Ferheen, before we go on to you, just want to let you all know that we will be linking all the information from the speakers into the email that we send you afterwards. So all of the information, their Gmails, their websites, or any other information that have about themselves, we will be linking them, so you can get in contact with them or just know more about what they do if you have any more questions.
So basically Dyllen just explained everything. So, but so, you know, but I guess I can just speak to that, maybe like research or medicine aspects, since that's kind of what I know best. if you are interested in either, going into some sort of a science research, position, maybe you want to, maybe one day, yeah, like get a PhD, or yeah, if you want to become a doctor, something Dyllen said really struck with me is you don't have to just do that one thing, right? If anything, and especially if you want to be a doctor, I think that at like admissions committees for med schools, they find those applicants the most boring, right? Because it's like, okay, so sure, you have a 4.0 and, a whatever, like a really high, MCAT score, right? Which is like the SAT to go into medical school. But again, all of your extracurricular activities are super cookie cutter, right? I volunteered at a hospital. I shadowed a doctor. I am a part of the pre-med club at my school. You know what I mean? It's boring. Instead, right? Like there have been stories of, yeah, like artists, right? Artists becoming medical students, right? And their whole essays are just talking about how, art and medicine are combined, like little, or music or whatever else, right? So if you are passionate about something that is not specifically related to the potential field you want to go into, that's a good thing. And I would say, really, you should have something like that, right? Let's say, like, for example, a little bit of my background. I really love animals. That's like, I really do. I really, really love animals. And I could never really have pets growing up. I have two very rambunctious cats right now, and they may or may not appear at some point in this recording. But it took me a really long time to get my cute little cats. But I really loved animals. And so I ended up volunteering at an animal shelter. And I wrote about that in my medical school applications, just talking about how much that experience was, just amazing, right? And that just kind of shows medical schools, these admissions committees, that you're a more well-rounded person than just, again, medicine focused, right? And so, again, like I know that probably, again, many of you are still, like, you're still in high school, you still have to get into college, and then after that, after you go into college, then you have to go into med school, right? Or even, again, research or whatever else. But just kind of, really, the best thing you could do right now is to go to a college that you really, really like. um, the other thing too I will say is that very often you might be pre-med right now, but then later, because the classes are really hard, and and then sometimes it's not practical anymore, and you're just like, I'm not into it anymore, and you switch to a different major, right? And so it's really important to go to a college that sparks joy, right? That brings you happiness, because it's not about the major, it's not about your career choice, it's about, in that moment, like, can you are you happy? So really, I think that if you're interested, again, in medicine, then continue to get good grades, right? Get into a good college. Again, go to community college first. That's totally fine, right? Like, you don't have to go to a 4-year in order to go to medicine. And if anything, to be honest, right? Like, I have a friend that did community college first and then transferred to Stanford and then is now in a PhD program, right, at Stanford, right? And so that's fine too, right? Like, you can do those things. Don't limit yourself. So yeah, I think that's probably my best advice to you, is just be open to different experiences and find the things that bring you joy.
Yeah. Dyllen and Ferheen left me with very little to say. Um, so I guess I'll just try to maybe reiterate. I'm just gonna say what comes to mind, but I'll start general. For a high school student to get into a major that they like, I would say, first, on extracurriculars, 2 to 3 things um, that you're really deeply involved with. Colleges like to see breadth of involvement in terms of like timeline, as well as like what you did there. Instead of like spreading yourself too thin, you're just going to be unhappy trying to do like 9 things on top of like AP and like studying for tests and like trying to have a social life, all these things. Like, just my advice and what I did was I went deep in like 2 to 3 different things. I did speech and debate because I loved speaking, and I loved research, and I loved talking with people, because I don't know, I don't come off as like an extrovert, and I'm really not, but like I just like being around people. So speech and debate was just like a social outlet, but it also helped me like not have to like really try to speak with people. I can just do it now because it just, all of that practice just kind of like helped me out in like a lot of different parts of my life. And then I volunteered with Red Cross Club and just like Boy Scouts. So I wanted to help my community, and I tried to do as much as I could for the people that I cared about and the issues that I cared about through that. And then I did internships. So I was doing research in a few labs through high school. So picked three things, and I tried to focus, like one was related to my major, one was a social outlet, and one was like my passion. So I did all of those things for 3 to 4 years during high school. And that really helped my college applications. Instead of like doing sports, this, that, and like only being involved with like clubs for like 6 months and then trying to like pass it off that I was actually part of it. Like when you, like your friends are gonna like be like, no, you weren't. Like, what are you talking about? You were only here for like 6 months. But like my friends are like, oh no, he was here like 4 years. And like I got a recommendation letter from like one of the teachers there. So it's like being involved in something for a long time and then really exploring what that activity does for your career as well as like your life in general is really important. And yeah, focusing on 2 to 3 different things, I guess, is my advice for extracurriculars. Courses, AP courses are kind of a must at this point for a technical field at least. So take not as many as you can, but take some. They definitely help your application stand out in terms of like people that don't take them. I've talked to like actual college recruiters and like companies, and like they actually say that AP classes kind of matter, but don't take like, I took 12 and it really killed me. So don't do that. Like 5 to 6 is just as good. But a thing that really, really goes underappreciated is taking community college classes over summer, or even co-enrolling while you're there, like maybe during a free period or something. Like you take an online community college course, and like the great thing about that is that it automatically counts as college credit. If you pass it, you don't have to take a stupid AP test. Like it just counts as soon as you pass the class, and that's it. And hardly any high schoolers I know do that. My little sister is way smarter than me. She's 16 right now. She's doing like 2 or 3 of those or summer, and like she's killing the game. And she doesn't have to take that many AP classes during high school because she's already done those over summer in terms of like an actual college course. And like they're easier than AP classes. Like you'd be surprised how easy some community college courses are. And they still teach you the same thing, and they give you longer, and they give you like tests that actually are like there's no like time crunch. I think that's the best way to explain it. Is like it's just an actual class, but it achieves the same thing as an AP course. Standardized testing. There's been a recent trend where colleges are starting to like care less and less about SATs and ACTs. I don't know if that will fully happen by the time you guys are applying to college, but just be aware that just do the research and like see if the colleges that you're applying to actually even require them. And then maybe instead of like spending the time on those, you can like spend time on like your extracurriculars and like with your friends. So like, but if you still have to take those SATs like and ACTs, if you're more of a like, I guess, numerical kind of like analytical person, I've heard that the ACT is kind of like your jam, versus like if you're more of like an all-rounder, the SAT is kind of your jam. At least that's what it was like when I was in high school, like in 2014 and 15, and I did better on the ACT than I did on the SAT because I was more like math and like science focused. So take both, just like take them. And like I don't really believe in like signing up for like those prep courses, paying like thousands of dollars for nothing. Like just grab a book, grab 4 or 5 friends and study for it. And like, I don't know, just like an hour a day, 2 hours a day, whatever you guys want. But take both at least one time if you can. And then study lightly using like prep books. College applications, Dylan talked about that extensively. I'm not a good resource on that because my essay sucked. So yeah, ask Dylan about that. And what advice, okay, so I guess 2 minutes on like engineering and then I'll end my answer. So like if you kind of have engineering in mind, take up to Calc 2 before you go to college. Calc in college sucks. Like, don't take it with a professor because you'll hate life. I finished up to Calc 3 before I went, and I didn't have to take any math classes except for linear algebra, and it really, really helped me out. But if you end up having to, then use YouTube videos because people on YouTube somehow teach better than like undergraduate lecturers, lower div. It's kind of weird, but trust me. Robotics team, if your high school has a robotics team, join it for engineering. They love that stuff. They eat it up. And then learn something like 3D printing. Some 3D printers have gotten like really cheap. Look into SolidWorks, which is a modeling program. You don't have to get really good at it or anything. Just like it helps you like visualize the ideas that you have, and then you can make them in 3D and then like kind of like explore design. So being familiar with like engineering technology, and then writing about it in like your essays helps. And then pick up a computer language like Python. Python is probably the easiest one to get into, in my experience. It'll really help, and you'll gain some technical skills before you actually go into college. So yeah, I'll end my answer there.
You know, this kind of was so helpful that I'm kind of sad that I'm a junior now. Like, Melody was just talking about how she wished she had this panel as a freshman. You guys are giving amazing advice. I wish I knew all of them before. Yeah. And just a quick note, we're running a little short on time. Amazing responses though. So you guys can just breeze over this question if you'd like, or even skip it. We're okay with that. But just to connect it back to Dino Tech, how would you use tech in your major or career?
Well, tech is part of the major or what I'm studying. So I guess I have like a lot of different CS classes that are planned in my like 4-year plan. So I'll just list some of them, like human computer interaction or mobile development, virtual reality, computer graphics and imaging, or user interface or web applications. But I think tech isn't just limited to coding either, because I use technology as I run my business, my college essay business. But that's stuff like knowing WordPress and doing my website on there, or Zapier for like integrations, and obviously like the entire Google suite or organizational apps, or whatever I use to make my email list, or the program for my online course. Like all of those things are tech related, but it's not like computer science, but I'm using it and running a business with it. So
For mine, yeah, I mean, medicine and research, there's a lot of technology being used. If y'all know about the CRISPR-Cas9 system, that is a piece of technology, I would say, that is a biological tech piece, right? And of course, you're using microscopes and ultrasounds and all sorts of different devices. And then if you're interested, so for example, I'm working for a telemedicine nonprofit right now. And so yeah, we're combining the idea of, again, using technology in medicine and trying to help underserved areas around the world. So there's a lot of technology in medicine and research.
Engineering in its modern iteration heavily depends on technology. You're going to have to know how to program in at least 1 or 2 languages. It's going to be either MATLAB and or Python. You need to know how to model in 3D. Basically doing this every day now. Kind of sucks with senior design, but SolidWorks, PTC Creo, or 𝑫𝑰𝑵𝑗𝑛𝑥, or some that come to mind. I use SolidWorks extensively. And then finite element analysis is another thing. It's basically how people model really complex systems somewhat accurately. So a program called Abacus is what I use for that. Yeah, and then obviously we're a really digital age. So like, I feel like we have a lot of skill sets that like older generations didn't, like word processing, Excel, stuff like that, PowerPoints, just like as a result of our circumstances. So you have a lot more experience with technology that is valued in industry than you would think, just by virtue of like being in the timeline that you are living in right now. So yeah, that's how like technology is a daily part of my major and my career.
Yeah, thank you guys so much. That was a great answer on the panel. Now, to our audience, I know that you guys had some individual questions catered to specific speakers. So if you want to ask them anything, just drop it in the chat or unmute yourself. And these can actually be any questions as long as they're appropriate for this panel. So go ahead and unmute yourself or type in the chat if you have anything to share. If not, Rodrigo, you can take it from here and ask them any questions that were submitted in the interest form. All right, we already have a question. Thank you, Kendon. So how do you cope with depression? Yeah, mental health is a big issue, especially for high school and college students. So if you guys have anything to share and if you're comfortable, yeah, thank you.
I'll take that one. That is a damn good question, because like I feel like one of this generation's things, like we're one of the most depressed generations. Like I think it was like 3 out of 4 people, 2 out of 3 people. I don't remember the stat, but like it's insane. And like accessibility to mental health care is so low in this country that it's really hard. So I think realistically, there's 3 things that I do to like kind of keep my mental health in check. Physical exercise is so extremely important to like just having a routine in like your daily life. Like just by virtue of exercising, like you're happier. I know it makes no sense, but like just do it. One hour a day. No questions. Just make time. And I guarantee you that you'll at least feel a little bit better. Number 2 is reading. You would be surprised how many things authors have written about, and like how much thought is out there on like the things that make us sad. Like people like to write when they're sad. So like a lot of stuff that I was going through at UC Santa Cruz, I read philosophy religiously. Like so many different authors have written about the stuff that was making me anxious. And like I was surprised that like some author from like 1850 was talking about like existential anxiety. It's just like there's a lot of information out there. So like research and like reading can really help at least like find things in like ideas in people that you like relate to. I think that really helps. And then 3rd is having a good social circle. Like that doesn't mean like dump all your problems on your friends. It's literally like just hanging out with people and talking with people about stuff that isn't depression, like, and like doing stuff, going outside. I know it's hard in a pandemic, but like people are probably doing like Discord nights and stuff like that. So like just having a good social circle and social net. Those 3 big things I think really helped me cope with a lot of stuff that I was going through. And as Ferheen said in chat, therapy is very important. If you can get help, then there's no stigma. Everyone in this generation should definitely try. Even if you're not going through much, like it always helps to talk.
All right, thank you so much for that. Yeah, I think I wasn't planning to have this question related to the panel, but that was really important to talk about. Thank you, Ferheen and Praj. Now, next question. Oh, this is specific to Dyllen. So what are some jobs that you would be offered or you would have the option of pursuing after getting a degree in what you're majoring in? Yeah, I agree with this question. I really love your major and I would love to know any occupations that would be offered in the future.
So to be completely honest, I don't have a set like, oh yeah, it's this, you're going to become this. Like I don't, there's a lot of different ways you can go with it. UX, UI design is one, but that's not something I want. I don't think I was considering it, but I just have such a very like entrepreneurship mindset that I see myself taking on projects and doing my own innovative things with a group of people. Like, you know, oh, everyone at Stanford talks about like, oh, a startup. But like maybe something like that. Maybe, I mean, you can work, there's a whole like 3D design. I actually started learning a little bit of like 3D modeling and stuff in Blender, and I thought that was like super awesome. And the possibilities for that are really incredible. I mean, there's working in VR and all the things you can do with that. I mean, I was just already dabbling in Blender, and like I want to make a music video in there. Like you can animate in there and just make kind of anything in 3D space, which is really neat. But so there's that, there's working in animation, there's like digital marketing, different types of design. So it's very broad. It's very broad. I think you can take it in a lot of different directions, and it's really just what you want, like you as an individual. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out myself.
Yeah, thank you, Dylan. That's also extremely good insight. I'll keep that in mind for when deciding your major. Let's see. Praj and Ferheen, this is a little bit more of a follow-up question, but Kimmin asked, do you believe school is where you get most of your depression from?
Yeah, I ended up I sent Kim in a direct message, but I think it's a combination, right? Like there's school, there's family life, there's relationships, right? You can, it's all related and it's all impacts you, right? But I think that um really, I mean, I struggled a lot when I was in high school, a lot. Even though I am very very happy, very like I'm positive and all those things, but yet like there were a lot of things on my mind and frustrations that I would hold, heavy, right? I didn't tell people that I was struggling, and so and I wish, right, if I could go back in time, or if I could like give myself advice, or send myself a letter or something, I wish I could just tell little high school Ferheen that tell your doctor that you're struggling. Tell, like, ask to try to go to therapy. I mean, I think that at least like for me it was really hard to talk to my parents about it, because that's just something that in my family we just don't talk about, right? So I think that it's really important to speak to someone, right? Maybe it's a teacher, right? Maybe you have a favorite teacher that you really connect with. Tell them and say, hey, I'm struggling, what do I do, what should I do, right? But and I mentioned this, right, depression, and again, if it's like legitimate clinical depression where you're diagnosed with it, it's a condition, it's an illness, right? And when you're ill, when you have a cold, when you have the flu, right, like you get medicine and you get better. And so I just really hope that if you are struggling, that is okay, because everyone struggles. And I really do hope that you just tell someone about it, someone that you love and someone that you trust.
In the chat, I just, oh, sorry, Dylan.
Oh,
Just want to, in the chat, I posted some questions, and you guys can either choose a question to answer or um, answer them all. They're just specific questions that someone had in the Google form. Kind of just want your feedback on, what's college for you?
I was just going to quickly jump in, and I think everything that Ferheen said is amazing. And yes, do everything that you just said. I just remember someone way earlier in the chat was like, oh, what about journaling? Like journaling is something that I do. And I actually wrote about that for one of my college essays, because that is how I get everything that's in my mind out and onto paper. And once you do that, you can really learn a lot from yourself and evaluate the things that are going on in your own mind, because you cannot just keep it all in your mind. Like that will drive you nuts, and it's too hard to process everything that you're trying to figure out just in your mind. But if you can visually see it on paper and lay it out, that makes things so much easier. And I know I would write a lot and be like, oh wait, okay, it shows that the actual problem is this, or this makes it clearer that now I just need to do this in order to fix it, or some stuff like that. Or sometimes it just feels better to just get it off your chest. So yeah, that is something that you should definitely do. Cool. I guess I can like look at these questions. How much support does your professors give you? How many hours of class? Are finals more exam-based or project essay-based? Well, for finals, that depends on the class you're taking. If exam-based would be more stuff like computer science, like there, usually you'll get a whole test for that and you have to code on the spot. But essay-based is usually for a lot of the humanities classes. And then for me, for art classes, I have to usually create a final project, which is honestly really fun to do. And I think professors are very supportive, at least at my school. For example, I was really struggling in my freshman fall, because I was involved in a musical. So I was always in rehearsal from like 7 to 10 p.m. every single night. And so I never had time to do my homework. And I did my homework in the middle of the day in like random time slots that I had available. And so I was really struggling in my English class because I just could not get the essays in on time. Because it takes me a lot to like really think and write good words. So I had to just tell my professor, I was like, hey, like I cannot get this in today. This is what's going on. I have no time to do anything. And she was very understanding. Obviously, like I got it in eventually and it was totally fine. So I think just being honest and like telling them when you're struggling, asking for help, they will find ways to support you. And yeah, it's not the end of the world if you can't turn in an assignment on time. I had another like final project for an art class, and I was rendering a huge animated 3D like animation thing. And my computer was running hot, like roaring for over 24 hours, just trying to render this freaking video. And I was freaking out because I was like, my project is due tomorrow. Once again, went to the teacher, told her my situation. She was like, okay. Ended up all being fine. Finally finished rendering eventually, got it by the time that we needed to present it for like, we had a whole showing and stuff. And I got an A. And I got an A in the other English class too. So it all works out in the end. Yeah.
From an engineering perspective, well, I'm just gonna say depends heavily on your college, depends heavily on your major, and it depends heavily on your professor. Like these are things that you have to suss out about them within the first 2 weeks of taking a class. And then there's things that you can do depending on what type of professor they are. If they are a professor that is known to be chill with their students and like helpful, then that's great. Like that's as far as you need to go on in terms of planning like support. But if they're not, then you have to look at your TAs for the class. If the TAs are good and the professor's kind of like, then rely more on the TAs for support in terms of like answering questions and blah, 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 blah. And even if the TAs aren't the best, then what I always do is I always take classes with a group of friends that I've been taking classes with since like freshman year. Same major as me, so that's the only reason why. Or just like if you don't know anyone, then like talk to people around you in a class. Like I think by the time you guys are going to be going to university, like this pandemic is going to be over, so like you'll have classes in person again. It's a lot weirder over like Zoom, like Zoom University, to like kind of apply this advice. But like having a study group for a class that you can like bounce ideas off of for like how to answer certain questions, and like studying together and then like going to office hours and whatnot really helps out, really takes the anxiety out of a lot, because like just by virtue of being around people that are trying to get to the same objective as you subconsciously push yourself harder, and you also have just more people to like explain a concept to, I think, at the end of the day, and like more perspectives on like what the answer is. So that's my answer for support. Any one of those things. Professor chill, TAs chill, or a study group, or all of the above. Hours of class really depends on how many classes you're taking and what classes they are, and if you go to lecture or not. So if it's an easier class that you're familiar with, then you're probably not going to be going to as many lectures and like trying to focus on your harder classes. If it's a class they dump a lot of hours into, then it can be anywhere from like 10 to 12 hours. If you're getting into like your upper divs, it can be anywhere from 15 to 20 hours with like the homework. If it's like really tough, just really depends. But you'll have enough time to like, if you have like a kind of set routine that you can like rely on and you're flexible, you'll have time to do the things that you need to do outside of class. I think that's what that question is trying to get at, is like class isn't going to be like your entire life, as long as you get good at like scheduling and managing your time well. How much homework really depends on the class again. Some classes have barely any, some classes have a lot. That can go either way. And our finals are exam and project based. Depends on the class. If it's a project class, it's a project. If it's an essay class like an English class or GE, it's going to be a final essay and an exam, or just a final essay. And if it's like something like a physics class or an engineering class, it'll be like technical questions. There's sometimes true and false. I've seen short essay responses as well, like 50 words to 100 words, like what's this concept and explain it in your own words type questions. So yeah, hope that answers all of this.
Yeah, I answered them all in the chat, but I can actually show you what my college schedule looked like. I did something great where I put everything into my Google Calendar, and I just kind of went back in time to February 2012. So I can show you if you're curious. Okay, so
I
I
am.
might need to, okay, I'm gonna stop sharing your screen. So this was my life back in college, and it was the worst. So yeah, I know. I also did way too much. And this is partly one of the reasons why I did really badly in school. So, right. So like I had like classes, I had office hours, you know, like chemistry labs. I had meetings for my organizations. You know, I had like, yeah, more Japanese classes and more chemistry classes. I also worked, right? So I had like huge chunks of time where I worked and going to office hours and like staff meetings, right? So, you know, I mean, this was pretty much my life for, oh, this one was pretty bad. My Saturdays were really bad, right? So, you know, I mean, this was my life for a really long time. But, you know, but honestly, I was also really happy that I had my Google Calendar because it kept everything very organized, as you can tell. So definitely recommend having some sort of schedule, calendar, planner to help you make sure that you are keeping track of everything. Because if you don't, like, can you imagine if I didn't have any of this and I had to like memorize this and I had to like actually like think about what I'm doing every single week, because I would go insane. So, but again, yeah, this was my life for 4 years and it was pretty awful, not gonna lie. So
I did
actually,
the
with that
same thing
said,
with-
when
sorry.
you're, you know, transitioning into kind of college, don't do too much. Focus a little bit more on school, because I did not focus on school in the first 2 years. I was really excited by the freedom that college allowed me, and I just did a bunch of extracurricular things. I was joining all of these clubs and doing all these fun things. And then when it came time to actually study, I like didn't, because I was like, oh, I was an A student in high school, like I'm fine. And then I got a bunch of C's. So I definitely recommend studying.
Yeah, no, like, okay, your first one, so like depending on if you're going to a semester or quarter school, after your first semester or your first 2 quarters is my rule for your freshman year, do not take more than the recommended amount of classes that your guidance counselor tells you to, or like your major counselor, whatever. Like, I know that you guys are extremely capable, but as soon as college hits, like your first quarter is like for socializing and for getting to know your college. That's how you should treat it. Do not go hard on yourselves, and do not go hard until like the second semester, like the last quarter of your first year. You will thank yourself for taking it easy. Get to know your college, get to know some people, and get to know like the clubs and like the campus and all that stuff. Trust me.
Absolutely. I just went back to my Google Calendar too, and it's so funny. I was like, how is it possible that I did this? Because now on a gap year, I have free time all the time. It's just hilarious.
Yeah. I can't believe I have to go back to doing this in a few months. Like it's been, this 1 year has been great of not doing anything, and then I have to go to med school. I don't want to go. I mean, I do, but I don't, you know?
I have a really quick question for everyone. Like, you guys, are you doing online school right now, or are you actually in your campus? Because I know some like college students are at their campus, but I'm not really sure.
I have a lab class that is in person, just because like it's senior design, so I literally have to build something. So there's no way I can really do that virtually. But everything else is online.
Yeah, all of my friends who are taking classes, it's all online. Again, I'm not taking classes. In terms of medical school, it's partly online and then partly in person. But again, like especially your first year, 2 years of med school is just all kind of sitting in class, taking notes and watching, you know, like doing lectures and things. So for the most part, it's all online. But again, I'm really hoping that everyone will be vaccinated and you know, life will start going back to normal by at least fall. So let's hope that y'all can go back to school.
Right. I'm on a gap year, so I'm not taking any classes. But if I was, it would all be online because Stanford is completely online. Stanford isn't letting people back unless you have special circumstances. And they've been screwing over students like multiple times by being like, oh, of course we'll let you back. We promise, we promise. We'll do everything to let everybody back. And then 2 weeks before like you're supposed to move in, they're like, actually, nobody can come. And so everybody who had like arrangements and living situations all have to figure out where they're going to go and where they're going to live. And that's been really hard on a lot of students. I'm glad I don't have to go through that right now. Yes, it
Yeah,
is
I agree.
stressful.
Yeah. I'll be including all three of you in our prayers. Those Google calendars, they really scared me. So lots of respect for you guys. And
Thanks.
yeah, we're also going extremely overtime. So thank you so much for staying for those who did. For the panelists, I know we didn't plan for this, so if you have any other plans, you can feel free to leave now. And Rodrigo, unless you guys have any more questions, I'm going to pass it off to Rodrigo for our closing. So if you have any questions, you can drop them in right now.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. So with that said, thank you for joining our panel today. I hope you learned something from our speakers. I know there was a lot of information, really useful information about like college, you know, different majors, like specific classes. And so I do hope that maybe you didn't find what you wanted like specifically, but kind of just found new knowledge in different majors, right? New careers, met new people that are studying different things, right? And just kind of heard their what like their experience, you know, that kind of really touched on me. I learned so much from you guys, so I hope the rest of you did as well. And with that said, I will also be linking the Dino Tech Instagram, LinkedIn, and email in our email afterwards, and all of the information from the speakers, like their LinkedIn, their Gmail, and any kind of website or other information from them also in the email afterwards. So yeah, if you have any other questions, please like type them in the chat, or maybe get contacting them, email one of our speakers if you do want to really ask specific questions.
If you guys don't have anything else to ask, then you guys are free to leave. Thank you so much for staying overtime with us. And we hope you have a great rest of your Saturday.
Yeah. Thank you guys for organizing this. It was really fun. You guys are extremely great. Glad that you're taking the initiatives for your futures. Don't stress too much. I know, like, I don't say this to everyone, but like, I get the vibe from you guys that everyone here is just going to be like double thumbs up in their lives. Okay. So you'll be fine. And feel free to reach out if you guys need any help.